Youth. Welcome to the Heritage Wealth Planning YouTube channel. I get this question a lot, so I figured I'd just address it directly. My man CB writes in, he says, hey, what happens if you maxed out, 49 years old, he maxed out his 401k, because what is it, 18.5 he can put in this year, and then next year he'll be 50, he can do a 24.5. What if you maxed out your 401k? What should you do then? All right. So what I get this question a lot. So I know some of this will be appropriate to you, some not, but even if you're not maxing out your 401k, I think you still need to understand the concept of what's going on here. Because remember, a 401k, you're putting in pre-tax money, a 403b, a TSP, pre-tax money. All right. So pre-tax money goes in and it's taxed when it comes out. So the more you put in, the less tax you pay today, the more tax you'll pay in the future, potentially. Depends on what your tax bracket. We're not even going to talk about the future tax rates. We're just going to talk about your taxes today. All right. So the one thing about the 401k is nice. It doesn't matter what your earnings are. You could be Bill Gates or who's a rich guy, what's his name, Bezos. You can be any of these guys, and you can max out your 401k up to $18,500 if you're under 50, $24,500 if you're over 50 for the catch up. The contribution that the plan will provide will whatever the match is, that'll be the employer contributions. And then some companies have what's called a profit sharing provision where they add to it if they have profit sharing. Now, there are companies that don't match anything. And if they don't match anything, the likelihood they have a profit sharing is probably not going to be high. But that's the three components of a 401k. Your employee deferrals, you're deferring salary. I'm not taking it. I'm putting it over here. You got your employer contributions. If they have a safe harbor, that means they're forced to put some amount in. I think it's 3% or something. I can't remember. It's 2 or 3%. Or they'll have a matching where they say, you put in 10, we'll put in 10. You put in 5, we'll put in 5. You put in 5, we'll put in 2.5. That's the employer matching. And then you have the profit sharing contributions, which usually gets tallied up at the end of the year. Say February, they say, hey, we've made this much money. We're going to put 3% of your salary in. And the max is like $49,500 that can go into a 401k. I think it's $54,500 that can go in from those three different sources once you're above the age of 50, something like that. Well, I mean, the hundreds of dollars amounts I just off the top of my head, I can't remember if it changed or not. At this stage, don't care. But anyway, just remember, it's basically $50,000 to $55,000. That's total that can go in. $18,500 to $24,500 as an employee, how much you can defer. You're deferring your amount of money to this 401k. All right. Here's my issue. As you follow my YouTube channel, I'm not the biggest fan of 401ks. I don't think they're scams like some of these guys out there. It's weird to me. And I definitely think the first thing you should do is take advantage of the match. If there is a match in your 401k or 403b, you'd be crazy not to take advantage of it. If you're in the military currently, you have no match. I think next year when they do the blended retirement system, they might, if anyone's military, put it on there. I can't remember if it's on BRS or there can be a match. I just off the top of my head, I forgot. I know the current situation, there is no match, but next year there might be. But anyway, we'll have to dive into that later. All right, so you take advantage of the match. So if you get a 2% match, you take advantage up to the match. If your income is pretty high, you probably want to defer some money. In fact, on my book, The Tax Bomb in Your Retirement Accounts, I show you exactly how much the match, the deferral. I'll show you right here. You can see exactly how much of a tax you'll pay on the amount that you don't defer. So if you're in a 35% tax bracket and you're going to think about deferring $15,000, it's going to cost you $5,250 in taxes if you don't defer it. So that's pretty significant. But what if you're only in the 12% tax bracket and you're thinking about deferring $15,000 of taxes? You're only going to save $1,800 in taxes. That's it. So if you're in a lower tax bracket, I don't see the benefit at all of deferring because you're actually saying I'm going to pay less in taxes today when you're in a low tax bracket for the opportunity to pay more in income tax, more in Social Security tax, more Medicare premiums, and more in qualified dividends and long-term capital gain tax, and then more in a higher tax bracket as well, the quintupling of your potential tax consequences when it comes to required minimum distribution. So if you're in a lower tax bracket, I'd say 22%, 12%, or 10%, I don't think you should defer more than what your company matches. I just don't. I actually do not have any problem with people having a good old-fashioned brokerage or taxable account, a mutual fund account, an ETF. And if you know me at all, you'll know I'm a huge fan of ETFs, not mutual funds on a taxable side. In fact, if you're doing a mutual fund as opposed to an ETF on a taxable side, that's the wrong answer. Don't do that because you're just going to pay more taxes. You want to do the ETF, exchange traded fund. And I got tons of videos on the difference between mutual funds and ETFs. Just real quick, a mutual fund is typically 5 letters as a ticker. An ETF will be 2, 3, or 4. But generally speaking, a mutual fund's 5, and an ETF will usually be 3. So if you go VWO, that's the Vanguard Emerging Markets ETF. USEMX is a USAA Emerging Markets Fund. Victor says, I'm 59 and a half. If I take out money from my 401k, will it not be taxed, and do I have to pay it back? Yeah, if you take out money from your 401k, Victor, it's going to be taxed. Absolutely. You don't have to pay it back. If you're asking about a loan, that's different. A loan is different. And maybe we'll dive into that here in just a second. But if you're taking a distribution from your 401k, it's absolutely taxable as income without question. All right. So and that actually leads me to another point. If you need money and you have only one option, which is your 401k, well, just like our man Victor says, you're going to pay taxes on that. That's just no getting around that. And what if you're making good money? You don't want to pay tax. That's that's the handcuffs you had for deferring your income into future years. Now, if you had a good old fashioned ETF account, just as a taxable account sitting on the sideline at Vanguard or Schwab or USAA or something like that, you have access to that. That's just a fact without any penalty, potentially without any taxation if you do specific identification. And the nice thing about the tax code is you can say, I have 100 shares of VWO that I bought for $10 a share. I got a fly flying around there. I got 100 shares of VWO that I bought for $20 a share. I want to take out, and right now this trading at 15. So you got 100. Well, let's just write this down. You got 100 shares at 10, 100 shares at 20. The stock price is 15. So you see this right here. You got it, and you can see my lovely handwriting. 100 shares at, that's supposed to be an at 10, 100 shares at 20. If you need access to cash and you don't want to pay tax, then you say, I want, and the stock's trading at 15, you say, I want to take out my 100 shares at 20. And that way, not only do I not pay tax because I have no gain, I actually have a loss. I have a loss of $5 a share right there. So I have a loss of $5 a share, and you get to write that off. You get to write up to $3,000 off against your income, or you can use that loss to offset something else. And so that's called specific identification. I get to identify which shares to sell to give me the least amount of taxes required as possible. Can't do that in a 401k. Everything that's in a 401k comes out as OI, ordinary income, everything. It doesn't matter. And so what happens with a 401k is that you'll have as ordinary income, which will go and pay, it forces you to pay more taxes, potentially more into capital gains. Just working with a guy right now, we're devising a plan for Roth conversions. All right. So we're looking at dividends. He has $11,000, $12,000 a year of dividends. And now if we start doing Roth conversions, that, taking money from an IRA to a Roth IRA, that's going to make his taxable income go up above the 22% threshold, which is going to make those ordinary as qualified dividends and long-term capital gains taxable as well. So basically we're thinking about doing $50,000 a year in Roth conversions. Well, again, if we do that, he'll pay $50,000 in taxes on on the money we move from an IRA to his Roth, but he's also going to now pay taxes on those dividends he received that up to this point was tax-free. So Victor says even at 59 and a half paid. Oh yeah, absolutely. So if you take money out of an IRA or 401k, 403b, it doesn't matter how old you are, Victor, you're going to pay tax on it. It's just no getting around that. It's just all there is to it. Now, you won't have to pay a penalty, a 10% penalty, but you're going to pay income tax. Absolutely. And if you live in a taxable state, like in Georgia, you'll pay income tax on that as well. If you live in Tennessee or something like that, you got it, man. You won't have to pay income tax on it for your state because there's no state income tax, or Texas. All right. So here, what do we do? All right. Let's just say I'm going to draw my little thing here. We got a 401k that matches 3%. All right. We're going to put 401k. We're going to do 401k, and we're going to put 3% into the 401k to take advantage of the match. So that's our 401k. We're going to take advantage of 3%. Now we got 25,000 disposable cash. We're not sure what to do with. All right, so here we got 25,000 left over. What do we do with that 25,000? Well, you put it in a taxable ETF that's low turnover, i.e., we don't want actually an ETF doesn't matter because there are no turnover capital gains. But we take it in I'll get to you here in just a second, Sammy. We take it in a low taxable account with low turnover. So if it's not an ETF, it's a mutual fund. We want to make sure it doesn't have a lot of capital gain distributions. doesn't have a lot of capital gain distributions. We want to make sure that as we let that money accumulate, there's very, very few capital gain distributions, which is why you want ETF, because most ETFs have no capital gain distributions whatsoever. So we want to get an ETF first and foremost. We also want to make sure there are not much to any dividends whatsoever. So ideally, and this will go back to my man CB, you do a small cap index fund, because small caps typically have 1% dividend, a 0.5% dividend. You can even slice and dice it even more and say, I'm going to get tech stock dividend or tech stock ETF or something like that has basically no dividends. Like Apple just started paying a dividend out a few years ago, only because their shareholders demanded it because they had all this cash on the side, but they didn't want to. And so on the tech side, they usually don't pay much in dividends. They're usually taking that cash and reinvesting it to get growth. And so we'd want you to do is say, okay, I got my $25,000. I'm going to get a small cap, low dividend, low to no zero dividend ETF. That's what I want. And the reason you want the small cap, low to zero dividend ETF. Great writing. I type, I don't write. But anyway, so the reason you want that is because you're not getting any income. And we don't want income if it's a non-deferred account, an IRA or 401k. If it's a taxable account, we want as less income as possible to flow back to your line 13 as a capital gain, line 8 as a dividend, or line 7, which is your taxable interest. We don't want anything in line 7s, 8, or 13. We want big fat goose eggs there, because we don't want this to give you more taxes, which makes your income tax higher, makes all the other stuff that we just don't want that. So my thing to CB, who asked the question, prompted me to do this video is, all right, stop maxing out your 401k unless you're in a high tax bracket. Again, if you're in a 37% tax bracket, it's probably not a bad idea to max out your 401k to defer the income to a later date. Sammy says, Victor's question, withdrawing from a Roth 401k. Well, that's the benefit of the Roth 401k. It's tax-free. That will come out tax-free for sure. You just got to make sure, and off the top of my head, I think it's about 5 years. You got to have it open for 5 years or something like that. I think with a Roth 401k, as long as you're over 59 and a half and had it open for 5 years, that's a Roth IRA. So I can't explicitly remember what the Roth 401k rules are. But generally speaking, what I say is you can roll it to a Roth IRA. As long as you've had the Roth open 5 years and you're over 59 and a half, Sammy, you can take it out tax-free without question. That's not debatable. You got it. On a Roth, I'm sure it's the same. 401k, I'm sure it's the same thing. But just remember the 401k, the employer has a lot more stringency potentially than an IRA, which is another reason I'm not a big fan. My man Mark writing in again from Philly. Love to see you. 401k, that's the thing. That the IRS gives you a lot of flexibility, and the employer can get a lot more heavy on the rules intensity than an IRA. IRA, just a regular custodian, Vanguard, Schwab, whatever, T. Rowe Price, USAA, they can be pretty liberal and lenient on how they operate the IRA. When it comes to a 401k, though, the employer can be a lot more stringent than what the IRS rules are. So going back to your 401k question, Sammy, a Roth 401k, I just see what the plan offers. Each plan can have different policies on what they can do for distributions, which is, again, another reason I'm not a big fan of the 401k, because remember, the company is liable. If the company screws up, they're on the hook for that, man. So all right, here's CB. My employer allows me to withdraw without 10%. No, not okay. So CB says, and this is a good opportunity here to discuss this. With a 401k, my employer allows me to withdraw without 10% penalty at age 55 to 59 and a half. That is part of the tax code. That is an Internal Revenue Code, the IRC. Any employer is by law, the tax code. You can, as long as you separate from service after the age of 55, if you have a 401k, you can withdraw from that 401k as long as it hasn't been rolled to an IRA without a 10% penalty. I used to deal with a lot of folks at Merck when I lived in Virginia. And a lot of these guys would go and they'd be told by financial advisors to roll over their money to IRAs. And I always said, don't do that. And not if you're separating from service after 55, wait until you're 59 and a half in order to roll over that IRA, because you have access to that Merck 401k plan and any 401k plan between the age of 59 or 55 and 59 and a half without a penalty. Still got to pay tax, but with no penalty by, like my man CB says, is the Internal Revenue Code. It's not specific to the plan at all. So that is one of the benefits of a 401k that outweighs the benefit of an IRA. What outweighs them both? It's a taxable account. The taxable account outweighs them both because there are no penalties. The only issue is if you have a taxable gain and you're not understanding of the specific identification rules where you can identify certain shares. So, all right. So again, you have your Roth, your 401k. Ideally, it's a Roth 401k because the tax-free benefit of it. I cannot stress that enough. In fact, if you're wondering about it, just read my book. You can get it free on Amazon, unlimited, free. I'm just telling you, 75 pages, something like that, of chock full of stuff of how Roth IRA will benefit you and your family for sure. All right. But anyway, so you got your Roth 401k. You put money in there to the extent of what they'll match you. So the employer will put their contributions go on the tax defer side, the pre-tax side. Your contributions, if it goes to the Roth, goes into the post-tax side. So essentially, I have two accounts in that regard. You got the Roth 401k, which is all your contributions, like Sammy talked about. So Sammy puts $25,000 into his or her Roth 401k. It's the Roth 401k side of the equation. And then they match Sammy $25,000 into the 401k. That will go into the tax deferred side of the 401k. Yeah, man. Victor says, thanks for the understanding about the penalty at 59.5. You got it. So now you have two accounts. You got one Roth and one traditional, deferred, tax-free, deferred, tax-free. You can kind of play those two against each other as your tax situation dictates. It's a wonderful concept. Tax diversification is critical to have here. I think a lot of people miss that boat, actually. So, all right. So now we got our Roth 401k or just regular 401k, depending on your tax bracket. The next best thing to do without question is a Roth IRA. I mean, it's because a Roth is wonderful, but the Roth does have some handcuffs. You can only have access to your contributions at any time. You can't have access to your gains until you've been 5 years and over 59.5, but you do have access to your contributions. So going back to this, we'll just use this for an example. Say you have a Roth IRA worth $50,000, of which 25,000 is your contribution. So you got 25,000 contributions that's worth $50,000. You have access to this. So you can take that out whenever you want. You say, give me my 25,000 bucks. And they'll cut you a check right out of the gate. No taxes, no muss, no fuss. The other 25,000 that's part of this right here, you can't touch until you've had it for 5 years and you're over 59.5. Your contributions are yours for the taking. So in some ways, it's kind of an emergency account, which I'm actually fond of. People should do that for sure. So you got your 401k, you got your Roth IRA, and then you got your good old-fashioned taxable account, just a good old-fashioned brokerage account, a good old-fashioned ETF/mutual fund account where you could potentially get a 1099 dividend distribution, capital gain distribution, taxable interest distribution. We want that money to be just as limited in taxes as possible. The less distributions, the better. Small caps, tech stocks, small cap growth stocks generally have less distributions, if any, whatsoever. We'd want that to be in there. Absolutely. Now, you'd want something like, you don't want like community banks. That's not a good place in a taxable account because they pay dividends. Now, dividends are tax preferable, but they could give you enough taxes to put you in a new tax bracket, which makes some of the preferences go away. So again, we just want anything that doesn't pay much. That's why an ETF with no capital gains or a mutual fund with no turnover, very limited turnover. Even index funds have turnover there, which comes back to you. So an ETF is the way to go there for sure. An ETF that doesn't pay taxes is the way to go. Doesn't pay dividends is the way to go. Stay away from the value side. So if you look like a Morningstar style box, they'll have large companies on this side, they'll have large companies up here, and then they'll split it down the road and say value growth. Value stocks, it'll be large, medium, small, value on the left and growth on the right, or however, it's like this matrix, like a tic-tac-toe board, exactly. Value stocks are the ones that have a higher dividend, right? So value stocks are lower in price, P to E, price earnings ratio, typically have a higher dividend, and they typically have a lower price to book. That's typically what represents a value stock. Now, do you need to know all that? No, just remember it's on the value side of the metrics of that Morningstar tic-tac-toe board. If it's a value, it's going to pay a dividend most likely, and the dividend will typically be higher than a growth stock will pay. Amazon doesn't have any dividends, high PE ratio, high price to book. Amazon's a growth stock. I don't know, GE is getting hammered now. So GE probably has a low PE ratio, pays a fat dividend. What's the other one? And I don't know what the price of book is. I don't know. But presumably the price of book is low because the price of the stock is low. So those three things are what determines the value. For this example, though, going back to the initial question of what should I do if I maxed out my 401k, we would not want a GE in a taxable account because of the dividends potential it pays out. You'd want your GE or something like that in a tax deferred account, like your 401k. Just don't want dividends. You'd much rather avoid dividends in a taxable account. And so remember, if it says value on it, you say dividends, value, dividends. Value just means low price to earnings, low price to book, and high dividends relative to growth. Growth means high price to earnings, high price to book, and very, very low dividends, if any at all. And just in your mind, Amazon is growth. I'm just using GE as value because it's been hammered so much. And I'm not saying it's a good buy. I have no clue at all. Was never a fan of Jeffrey Immelt. The guy was flying around a corporate jet and he had another corporate jet falling behind him in case that one broke down, all the while saying how green he was. And what the hell is that? Like, dude, you can't fly two jets around all over the world saying you're a green guy. That's crazy. So I'd never like that. The hypocrisy drove me crazy. All right, that's what I wanted to talk about here, just the difference between what you should do. So let me just draw it out real quick. And I know this might bore some of you, but you got your Roth, you got your deferred, and you got your taxable. And so these are three buckets of money you have here. You got your Roth, you got your deferred, which is an IRA, and then you got your taxable. So in the Roth is what you want, your high growth, your high dividend. So this would probably be your value stocks in here. You want your high dividend paying, high growth, stocks essentially is what you want. You want Roth to be your higher dividends and high growth, which again would be a stock. Deferred, if you're doing any bonds or real estate investment trusts, would be here. All right, deferred, always your IRAs or 401ks is going to be on your deferred. Anything that pays an income, any kind of income, bonds, real estate investment trusts, I mean, high dividends would ideally still be here, but let's say you don't have a Roth, you want your high dividends here. So large cap stocks that pay dividends, bonds, real estate investment trusts, and I guess if you have, I don't have any bonds, so I don't even really want anything in this. I don't want it. I just want this and this guy right here because I don't believe in bonds. But if you do have some bonds, it'd be in here. And that's just me. Just because I don't believe in bonds doesn't mean you should not believe in bonds. Everyone has a reason to exist for their own portfolio. And your taxable account, again, would be your small cap, aggressive, swinging for the fences stuff that does not pay any dividends. And if it's an ETF, you won't get a capital gain. That's it. Any thoughts, questions, anything jump out at you all, folks? I certainly appreciate you being online. Have you had a chance to see the new website? We, like I said, we changed it all over. And it's still in a work in progress. I got to do a couple of things in terms of updating some of the content on there, but we're going to get it looks like it's pretty good. It looks like it's ready to rock and roll. Just my man, Dave, who's doing it, is waiting on a couple of things from me. But if you have a chance, go there. It's I like the way it looks. It loads a hell of a lot faster, which before is taking forever and it's driving me crazy because you just can't have that for Google. Google loves websites that load. I don't like it when they don't load. So you got it, Sammy. All right, guys. Well, if you have any questions, thoughts, concerns, don't forget to subscribe, share the content, thumbs up. The comments always helpful. So, man, I appreciate it. I got a couple other videos here to do today, so stay tuned. See you next time. You got it, Victor. See you guys. See you, CB. See you, Mark.